agree with that exact argument, so.
My brother built a house outside of Wellsville, and he put a mountain fuel line in.
And then everybody got.
Okay, you're now streaming.
They built onto that.
You don't trim the stream.
So that's the exact concept. We're looking to see if we can.
You guys are now
integrate that
streaming.
with the roads.
It's now streaming. Just so you know.
You got 5 seconds to read that.
Cool. I got it done. I think we're overrepresented in microphones. Can I throw it away?
No. We did not throw it away.
Set it aside?
No.
There's way too many here.
Put 5 around Gordon.
There we go. That's done.
We do it again. Okay. Meeting will come to order. Thank you for joining us. Today is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021, and this is the Cache County Council meeting. We'll begin today with an opening by Council Member Gordon Zillis.
I'd like to make my remarks in the form of a prayer, and after which I'll ask you to stand to repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. Let all the latecomers come in and take a seat. I am praying.
That's about 20 years old.
When I was in a church calling, the one that walked in last gave the prayer, so.
That's Bryce.
Dear Father in heaven, as we come before Thee tonight, we're very grateful for all the many blessings which Thou hast shared with us. We appreciate Thy gracious hands. We are very much appreciative of the area that we live in, for the mountains and for the clear streams which we enjoy here in Cache County. We're grateful for the people that live here and reside and are good to each other and share one another's burdens. Now as we meet tonight as a council, we ask that we may, as council members, be attentive to the words that are said by the public, and that we may interact with them, and that we may come to an understanding of their concerns. Help us to make the decisions which will be beneficial for the people of the county and for the county as a whole. We ask for Thy direction as we meet here tonight. I pray that we may all do things according to Thy will. We pray for Thy help, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gordon. Okay. We need to review and approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next we have the minutes, and if you'll notice, there was some revised minutes in your packet. Did you all get a chance to look at those? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the revised minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the revised minutes. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next on our agenda, number 5, is report of our county executive, David Zook. David?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have a couple of items to report on this evening. First, I wanted to just briefly mention we had our fire board meeting today, and council members Zillis and Erickson serve on that board with me. And we talked about a couple of things. One, just to give you a heads up, we're talking about establishing a fee waiver policy for ambulance patients who are unable to pay. That's still under development, but we talked about wanting to make sure that the council knew about that and knew that we were working on that. When the ambulance system was under SEMS, the Cache County EMS Authority, they had a similar policy, so we'll be working on that over the next coming months. But another thing that we talked about in that meeting was the fire restrictions that are in place. And with the really dry weather we've been having and the fireworks season coming up, there have been a lot of concerns about that. So what the status is right now, and I don't see our fire chief in the room, but what the status is right now in relation to fireworks, Cache County, or the county council, apparently does, I just found this out today, does not have jurisdiction over determining whether or not fireworks can be used in the unincorporated area. The state retains that jurisdiction, and the state has already decided that there will be no fireworks in the unincorporated areas. So that's already banned. That applies in the Forest Service areas. They always ban them in their areas. So on any state lands, unincorporated area, federal lands, fireworks are not allowed. The only place fireworks will be allowed will be in cities unless they have restricted them. And some cities have already done that, especially the cities along the benches have restricted fireworks in certain areas. So the fire department has a map that shows that, and if people are interested in seeing that, they can do that. Did you have any questions about that? I know Councilwoman Worthen, you wanted me to specifically report on that. Does anyone have any questions about the fireworks restrictions or any of that? If you do, we'd be happy to help you out with that or get more information out.
David, let me ask you quick, because I saw one of my friends who's a state legislator sounding off today about the fireworks issue. So, but the state law is that that for unincorporated areas is retained by the state. Is
Yes.
that right? And
Yes.
they already said no fireworks.
Correct.
And that's not the legislature. Or is it the legislature?
No, it's not the legislature. It is, I think it's the state fire marshal.
The state fire marshal.
It's
Okay.
either that position or one similar to it that makes that determination.
Okay.
I know Chief
Thank you.
Hammer said in our fire board meeting that it's nothing to do with the county and it's nothing to do with the governor. It's the state fire marshal that makes that decision. It's alone, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know that in the cities, it's similar process. So some of those cities have already done that. I found out today, Nibley not only banned fireworks on the east side of Highway 165, but they also banned aerial fireworks, which I believe they're the only one in the county that has done that. And that's the first time I've heard of that happening in our county. So that's the update on fire restrictions. Speaking of fire, today we had a great event with our Public Works and fire facility. A couple of you were able to make it out to that. And we had a ribbon cutting for our new facility out in Hiram. It will house our fire department as well as our Public Works offices and facilities. We had a great turnout. A lot of people came out, and we had several speakers and a ribbon cutting. You see in the background there a couple ribbons. We had one that was more of a Public Works ribbon, and one's a fire line, do not cross. So we did two ribbon cuttings to represent the two departments who are out there. And it was a lot of fun, and thank you everybody who helped with it. Thank you everybody who helped with the project, and thanks for everyone who came today and helped us to celebrate a great day. So that was one grand opening we had today. We actually had a quiet grand opening today as well, early this morning. We had a grand reopening of our main runway out at our Logan Cache Airport. That runway has been out of commission for a couple of weeks as it's been resurfaced. We milled off a few inches. There I am driving down it. I'm not in a plane, a vehicle, but that was this morning. It's nice and smooth and good looking, restriped and safe, most importantly. So it's got about 4 inches of new asphalt on it. And this morning it was open for business. And before we could get out on the runway, we had to wait for a line of planes who were landing, taking off. There was a Cessna Citation private jet that took off right before us, somebody who stopped in. and a whole line of students. They were all backed up, just doing their touch and goes. So there was a lot of pent up demand to get back out on that runway. So it's up and running. They're getting the ILS system should be up and running today, and it'll be fully functional. They have a couple of things they still need to do on that project. They'll be grooving it and restriping a couple of the other areas still. So we'll have a nice groovy runway soon. Another thing that I wanted to make sure, and this is at the end in our list of upcoming events, but I wanted to make sure you knew about the CJC grand opening coming up. That's not it yet, but the CJC grand opening is coming up next week. It's 4 o'clock next Tuesday. So basically, it says 3 to 7 on here, but I think the actual ceremony will be at 4 o'clock. So if you're able to come to that a week from today, the CJC grand opening, I want to make sure you all knew about that. This picture, this is the CRIC grand opening of the Cash Refugee and Immigrant Connection. They had a grand opening of their new facility this Saturday. They asked me to come and speak at, and I wanted to let you know about it for 2 reasons. One, I want to make sure that that you're aware of their center and the resources that they provide if you happen to know anybody who's an immigrant or a refugee here in the Valley. Another thing I wanted to make sure you're aware of is they are working with legislators at the federal and state level to make our county a resettlement area for refugees. Right now, refugees, when they come to our state, there's only one place they go, and that's Salt Lake City. From there, they end up dispersing on their own out to different places, including a lot of them here in Cache Valley. They end up working and supporting a lot of our businesses here in our economy. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that effort they are undergoing. Speaking of which, I had a meeting last week also. Sean Milne was there with me, and we met with the Cache Valley Economic Development Alliance Executive Committee. We did kind of a annual strategic planning session. We had a number of items on our agenda. Ended up really just talking about one item, and that's workforce shortages. We have such a workforce shortage right now, less than 2% unemployment, and we were talking about a number of things that we could do or should do maybe to help support our business community. So stand by for maybe some ideas coming out about that. The Chamber of Commerce is a big part of that. Another thing I want to let you know about that the Chamber's involved in is they have a Northern Utah Chamber Coalition that does legislative advocacy. They've been very much involved in advocating for a number of issues for us, including transportation, education. Something that they're adding this year as a priority that they're going to advocate for all of the Northern Utah communities is social services. And something that's been talked about is some type of a centralized resource center with a number of social services available. So there's been a lot of discussion about that, and just wanted to give you a heads up that that's a topic that's being discussed. One of the needs that we've been dealing with is housing. We had a housing summit that happened about a week ago. It was hosted at our event center at the fairgrounds. It was a great event, and really just in some ways highlighted the tremendous need and challenges that we're facing right now. I would say it was the opinion of most of the experts there that this housing crisis that we're in right now is not going to go away anytime soon. Prices continue to go up, demand continues to increase, and the supply is not catching up. So that ultimately was what the solution that most people thought was necessary, was that the supply catch up to the demand. As far as what the county can do about that, we're limited, but it was a great conversation. Another event that happened over the last week, Council Member Paul Borup and I went to the Chamber of Commerce and spoke. There's Council Member Borup. The two of us had an opportunity to address the Chamber. That was actually the same day and the same time as the Housing Summit, so a lot of stuff going on that day. And we spoke, and Council Member Borup did a great job speaking and talking about how our citizens could get involved in local government, and then I gave an update to the Chamber on some of the things we've been working on as a county organizationally. One of those things, it's summertime and a lot of events happening at our event center and our fairgrounds. We had the opportunity this year to host Summerfest, and it was a huge event. I had an opportunity to go by and see our facilities being used, and lots of people there. The parking situation was pretty difficult. I drove around and looked at that because I know we've had discussions about parking there, and it was blocks in every direction. But nevertheless, it was a great event and good that we could host that. Another meeting I attended over the last week was Bear River Health Department had their annual strategic planning session, and James Swink, our county attorney, and I went to that. That's not it yet. I don't have a picture for that one, but we talked about a number of things health related in our community, and Chairwoman Worthen and I have talked about bringing the health department here to do a workshop or presentation with the council about the COVID response, the pandemic response. We talked a little bit about that in our strategic planning session, and I think that'll be a good discussion for us to have here. What you see up on the screen right now is this is Bear River Association of Governments. We had the opportunity last week to testify before a congressional committee about the Bear River Heritage Area. And there's a bill being run by Congressman Moore to establish a Bear River Heritage Area that would cover the northern 3 counties in Utah, as well as Franklin County. And its ultimate goal, the ultimate goal of the establishment of the Heritage Area, is to promote and increase tourism in this area and preserve and promote some of our historical places and history in our area. So that Congressman Moore is working on that bill, and it sounds like it has a good chance of passing. I guess this is a good thing from COVID. We get to do things like testify before congressional committees through Zoom these days, so we didn't have to go to DC for that. Nibley had its Heritage Days this last week and had the honor of serving as their Grand Marshal, which was a lot of fun. But while I was there, I got to meet some of our first responders, and I don't know if you all know this or if this was clarified, but I wanted to make sure you knew. Those first responders, they work for our county fire department now as part of the EMS switchover. We acquired some volunteers around the county who are now part of our county family. I kind of pointing to the logos there. Originally was Nibley Millville EMS serving those communities, but now you see there's a county fire logo on that as well, because they're now part of our county fire family. I think that was it. It was a busy week last week. Happy to answer any questions you might have, but it's summertime is a busy time, so thanks for your support.
Excuse me, any questions? Okay, thank you, Executive Zuck.
Also, you have the May 2021 financial statements been provided to you, and there are no appointments before you today.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to item number 6, items of special interest. 2020 External Audit Report with Joan Simpkins. Somebody hear from them? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jason Slide. I'm an audit partner with Joan Simpkins. We're an accounting firm just down the road, about a mile away on 10th West. And we're engaged this year to audit the financial statements of the county, and we appreciate your business and being able to work with your good team. We work mostly with your finance department, with Cameron and his team and Phil Noble, but we also work with several of your elected officials as well. And we look at processes and policies at each of the different departments that under those elected officials. One of the groups that we also work with a significant amount is your audit committee. We meet with them before the audit, we meet with them after the audit, and we've presented these financial statements to them in detail already. And because of that, I thought it would be best if we just did a quick overview of your financial statements just in general, and then kind of go over our audit reports and our opinions. Your financial statements are made up basically of 4 parts. You have your financial statements and the related notes. You have required supplementary information that needs to be included with the financial statements. because the governmental accounting standards setters feel like without it, your financial statements wouldn't be complete, wouldn't have enough information for readers of the financial information. There's additional supplementary information that's included by the county at its own choice, just to show the readers of the financial statement some additional information and to give more insight. And then finally, there's the reports. In general, on the financial statements, I think I'd just like to leave it at that the county was able to stay within its budget this year. The county had a good year. Even with the difficulty of the COVID situation, the county was able to increase its reserves and stay within its budget. It's in a positive cash position and the operations went as planned, as well as they could be with COVID in place. As far as our financial reports go, we issue several reports. The first one you can find on page 1 of I guess page 3. And our reports are not issuing an audit or an opinion on how these financial statements were put together, whether or not your budgets are good, things like that. But we're giving an opinion on whether or not the information that's included in these financial statements is presented materially correct. We are able to obtain that opinion, or we determine that opinion based on procedures that we perform. We don't come in and look at 100% of the financial transactions that happen during the year. Instead, we assess risk based on our understanding of your policies and your procedures, our understanding of your internal controls over financial reporting. And through that risk assessment, we develop procedures and a process that has us look at, although not everything, we still look at a significant amount of transactions that happened during the year. As a result of our audit procedures, we're able to render an opinion. And as I said, in our opinion, these financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's pretty much what the audit report says on pages 3 through 5. Some additional requirements that we have as auditors of the county is we're required to look at the internal controls over financial reporting. We don't test those controls, but we're required to identify and get an understanding of the design of the controls and see if there's any flaws or weaknesses there. On page 94, we issue a report that basically says we obtain an understanding of the design of your controls, and we did not identify anything that we consider to be a material weakness in your controls. Now, that doesn't mean that material weaknesses may exist that we didn't identify, that we weren't auditing to that level to where we were going to identify all material weaknesses. Through our procedures, we did not identify anything. We were also required to look at compliance over the county's compliance with the county's grants, contracts, other agreements. Same thing. We do not test all those. We don't test for non-compliance. We just, through our procedures, if we identify non-compliance, we'll report that to you. It would be the same thing with fraud. If we identified fraud, we would report that to you, but we're not out looking for it. That's not part of our procedures. This report, again, it basically states that we did not identify anything in your internal control or financial reporting or in compliance that we consider to be a material weakness. Page 96 and 97, 98, because the county spent more than $750,000 in federal funds, we are required to test your compliance over various compliance requirements related to federal funds. And the county did spend much more than $750,000. It spent nearly $25 million in federal funds this year. The majority of that was related to the CARES Act funding. That was about $15 million. These financial statements also pull in the financial statements of each of the component units of the county. A component unit is a separate legal entity that for which the county is responsible or has some sort of accountability due to members of the council being on that board or assessing taxes, things like that. So it also includes the Bear River Health Department in its financial statements, in these financial statements. So that's another reason why your federal expenditures are high as they are. But there was about $15 million in COVID this year by the county. We tested those. We also tested a few more programs, the largest of which was WIC, and then we tested the airport improvement program, which was mentioned earlier as well. In total, we tested about $19.5 million of the $25 million in federal funds that were expended. And as a result, our opinion on that is also, we did not identify anything that we would consider a material weakness or significant deficiency in controls over those federal programs. Finally, in the state of Utah, there's some additional compliance requirements that have been established by the state auditor's office. This is unique to Utah. We work with 4 or 5 counties in Wyoming, and they do not have this requirement. And we tell them that they're lucky that they don't have this requirement. But we also issue a report, page 104 and 105, 106, the last few pages, where we're required to test the county's compliance with certain compliance requirements established by the state auditor's office. These include budgetary compliance, fund balance, which basically they want to make sure that you're not holding on to you're not trying to hold on to money too much. You're spending it when they want to make sure you're spending your citizens' money. Taxes, they're making sure that you're doing your meetings correctly, that the minutes to these meetings are being posted so that people can view them and see them, that you're being transparent. And again, we have nothing that we've identified that we would consider to be material non-compliance there. So there's a lot going on in these financial statements, but in our opinion, the county has a great financial department. It's being managed well. The elected officials are being reported to, and they're also operating in their capacity, especially through the audit committee, which is great to have. Not every governmental entity has an audit committee, and yours is very. It's a high-functioning audit committee where a lot of good information and good conversations and topics are discussed. So we appreciate that, and I'd be open to any questions if you have any. But that's our report.
Thank you. Are there any questions, council?
I got one. If you were to lower the risk of fraud at all, even what areas of audit would you pursue to do that for our county?
To decrease your fraud risk, I think the best control that you can have is segregation of duties, making sure that not one person is doing everything. The county does a pretty good job with that. I feel like we've got elected officials that are part of committees, that are part of this audit committee specifically. Reports are given to them. We don't have Cameron doing everything. He's not reconciling bank accounts. He's not signing checks, that kind of stuff. If he is, there's always a second person that's signing that. But that's what I would think is looking at your policies, looking at each of your departments and making sure that there's not one person that has access to multiple parts of one process.
And your process looks into those.
Yes. Yep.
Each of the departments.
Yep. The county is large enough that we do it on a rotation type basis. If we felt like there was significant higher risk there, we might do it every year. But we might look at the clerk auditor's office this year, the assessor's office this year, and then maybe next year the treasurer's. This year, I think we looked at nearly everything. So,
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work and coming here and presenting to us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, since we set this on our agenda at 5:30, we left it kind of standing on public hearings. I'll move to item number 9. We don't have any public hearings per se, but we do need to set 2 public hearings. And on item B, John wanted to, if I remember correctly, John, you wanted to speak to item B, is that correct? Yes.
before we set the public hearing?
Yeah, just make sure. Maybe you'll decide not to, I don't know.
I need to open a couple of things here.
While we're waiting, council, if someone would like to set number A, the public hearing for the Christie rezone, we could do that.
I move that we set a public hearing for ordinance number 2021-17 Christie rezone for July 13th, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to set a public hearing for July 13th for the Christie rezone. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I would propose that we set a public hearing for July 27th, 2020, ordinance 2021-18. An ordinance to vacate any public right-of-way south of roughly 900 south on the road now in place in accordance to vacate any public right-of-way, and I guess this is in Paradise.
Yes. And this is what John was going to explain to us. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Council want to wait to hear about this before?
Yeah, let's hear
Okay.
Keep the motion in.
I'll hold on to that.
Active
Yeah,
until
I
we
won't
hear from-
kill it. Yeah, we won't kill it yet.
We really ought to set that. We're halfway in, and John can wait 1 minute. Is somebody going to second it so that we can move on?
Well, this is what he wants to talk to you about.
Is this what he wants to talk about?
Yeah, this is what he wants to talk about. And so maybe after you hear it, maybe you'll go, nah.
We might not want to do this. I might withdraw my motion.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Well, you can reserve that right to withdraw.
I'll reserve the right to withdraw it. He might convince us some other way.
A few weeks ago, Matt Phillips and I did a workshop with you talking about some land issues and some road issues, and this is following up on one of those specifically. We highlighted this one for you. There seemed to be a tentative thumbs up. This sounds like something that would be good. We're wanting to set this one for a public hearing, and so I wanted to just refresh your memory on what we had talked about. This is Paradise, if you see out here, and Second West in Paradise continues out into the county. The folks that own this parcel across the street, and they're the Baldwins. The Summers own land here to the south. The Baldwins have come in and been working with Development Services to be able to build on this lot. What we have worked out as staff is that as part of the Baldwin subdivision and building here, these adjoining landowners, this is also a Baldwin, I forget the name of the folks here, the Summers over here, who claim the road, would all deed a turnaround easement right here, so that we would have a 100-foot turnaround. Currently, county vehicles or Paradise City, who helps the county with maintenance here, comes down and does a turnaround in the Summers property and then heads back out. The Summers claim this stretch of road as being their own private road. The county has arguments that it could be a county road as you come to here, and indeed, and I'll show you an old plat map as well, that there may be a right-of-way, public right-of-way that continues on through here. As we presented at the workshop, there's we as staff, we don't see a need or purpose to have the road or right-of-way that would just kind of come and dead end here at this time, and that if there ever were development out here, there would need to be roads dedicated to the county when that development happens. So staff is proposing that the council vacate whatever right-of-way the county may have from this point south in exchange for these landowners giving the county a turnaround easement here. The county's claim to a right-of-way there is based on two things. One is an argument that there may have been sufficient use of that road over time down into the Summers property, that it's a public road by use. And moreover, there's the original farm survey. This is an overlay of what the farm survey shows here. It was a right-of-way on the original farm survey back in the 1800s. So we've got a potential argument based on those two things that the county has a right-of-way here. But again, what we're proposing is the county vacate this right-of-way in exchange for a turnaround right here. So I know you ordinarily just set the hearing, wanted to present that to remind you of that, because the Baldwins are needing to make some decisions about construction and moving ahead with their process. And we know you'll need to hold a public hearing and get public input. But if there were hesitancy right now, even before public input with what we're proposing, that would be very helpful for the Baldwins and staff to know. If there isn't hesitancy or even some favorable feelings toward this as you set the hearing, that would be helpful for the Baldwins and staff to know also. That's all I had.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John?
John, is that all Summers property there, all those tracks that's got different numbers?
Yeah, we'll come back here. This parcel is Summers. I believe this parcel is Summers. Summers. This whole area is pretty much Summers property. And the Baldwins and Summers are also related. So this whole area down here is Summers.
Well, Gordon, if you won't withdraw your motion, I'll second it.
Okay, I stand that the motion's a legitimate motion to go ahead with it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to set a public hearing for July 27th for ordinance 2021-18, which would vacate public right-of-way south of 9500 South on a road now in place and known as Second West near Paradise. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and that is set. Okay, we will now move back to item 6B, which is a Cache Valley Transit District report from Sean Bushman. He's our representative on the CVTD Board of Trustees. Thank you.
I brought Patrick Jenkins with me. Oh, Todd's here too. He's on our executive committee and a representative from Logan. Just kind of, I guess my job is to report every few months and give an update of kind of what's going on, and so I wanted to do that at this time. As we come out of COVID, we were seeing a few kind of changes. Our ridership is, it dropped down. I mean, we were telling people not to get on the bus because during the worst of COVID, right, because of community spread, and so we dropped to about 10-20%. Now we're back up to about 50%. We have an online counter. If you go onto the website, you can see how many people got on a bus today, and I think we're, I don't know, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. Summer's a little slower. We've also had some staffing challenges. So the kudos to the general manager and the administration to try to work through that. Hopefully we'll be up and running completely by the advent of the students again in August. Our building, we have an oversight committee. So the new facility that we are working on, we have an oversight committee established. It includes some local engineers, a couple of folks on our board, including some from our audit committee. And we're just at the stage of setting up that oversight committee and getting the original or the early meetings planned. One of the questions, or one of the requests we had actually from this council last time we talked, and then in our side meetings, was to get some frequently asked questions, and we have done that. We've set it up on the website. It's a work in progress, but if you go into the website on the pancake menu, you'll see down there it'll say to elected officials or general public, and those are FAQs, and they're getting better and better. So, and then finally, just kind of some upcoming things that we're working on this year. One of our challenges has been we've been using our radio to update our real-time app. And if a bus driver is like communicating on the radio, then the app doesn't refresh and all of a sudden we're a minute behind. So we are now moving to, the real-time app goes through GPS, and those will be on every bus. But a side effect of that is that we can now also count every rider that gets on every bus every time. And before, we've done our every route, who gets on and off, data collection every 3 years because it was so intensive. But now it's going to be automatic. And all of these changes are going to kind of be implemented in the next few months, or well, probably closer to in winter, right? Yeah, January, February. And then with that, though, we'll have a much improved app. So we'll have, and that's been one of our biggest requests from riders is they want the app, the real-time app, to be just a little bit better so they can time it, so they don't sit out and freeze at a bus stop. We've also engaged with a planner to work on some challenging areas for CBTD, which are namely the Island, Cliffside, River Heights, Providence. But they, in this day of more people working from home, different demographics, a lot of influx of people in the valley, I think we'll use this planning group quite heavily on some other questions. Patrick, you've got some stuff
just
too.
One thing. We appreciate this partnership we have with Cache County and the one-on-one audiences that we've had with each of you and the feedback you've given us, and we've tried to deliver on some of those things. As we shared in those conversations, we basically have 3 priorities for this community, and one is going to be reducing emissions, and the other is reducing congestion. But our primary one that we drive for is the increased access. I live over by Councilmember Ward. We have 2 gentlemen that I use their story quite a bit in our neighborhood that their disabilities are such that they can't drive a car themselves, and so they use CBTD to participate in gainful employment. That kind of story is very, very frequent in this community. So this partnership with Cache County is very important to us. We appreciate the feedback and the support you give us. On August 18th, we're doing a bit of an open house. I'd love to have all of you come out. It's over by that new airport. We'll send you some flyers soon. We'll teach you how to drive a bus. That's probably the best offer you're going to get all night tonight. So thank you again for the partnership. You are in good hands by Representative Dr. Sean Bushman. He is probably our most knowledgeable board member. He represents you well. So thank you again for the partnership.
Do we get to go as fast as we want when we drive?
Yeah, it's like speed. Yeah, Sandra Bullock will be there and everything.
It's called a bus rodeo, and I've seen these in the past. They are actually very, and there will be an open house where you can learn about the building and all sorts of things going on. So I'd encourage you. It'll be the Wednesday, August 18th, like 10 to 2, so just come and go whenever you can.
I heard you're having a hard time getting drivers.
Yes.
So is this what you're trying to?
Trying to hire us.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I just wonder if you're recruiting.
The best of the best. Yeah, the best of the best get to go down to Hiram on that route. They get to do the Hiram route drive. Any questions?
Any questions, council?
Oh, I just had one. You mentioned these areas are such a challenge. You're kind of having a challenge with some of these areas over here. Why?
There's probably a multitude of reasons, but from what I know, one of the reasons is that it's so close to the main destination, but yet there are choke points. You can't get a bus up a number of roads, so people have to go out to 100 East or 100 East and then come up. Buses can't go up that steep road. So it's one of those areas where there's a
road access rather than everyone jumping on the bikes and things like that.
Yeah, and that's my take on it. But I've seen it, and my daughter lived down there for a while. A lot of people want to take the bus, but it's quite a bit longer, than it could be if we could. But it's just the geography. You have to deal with it. But there are a lot of neat ideas being floated out there, and so I'm excited for this planner.
This lack of drivers is a serious issue, isn't it?
Yes.
Everywhere it's. Because some of those drivers are saying, hey, I can go jump in a truck and make twice as much or doing other things. So.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's a challenge.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. We'll move to item 7A. Department committee reports. Report regarding funding previously approved by the county council to be allocated for the hiring of a county grants manager. Cameron.
Yes, and I hope this is not overkill, but I thought maybe it would be good to just put it all down, and that way we can have a reference document for what's happened with this. So let me plug that in. Thank you, Janine. Appreciate that. Switched me right over. All right, so this is our grants manager funding, kind of review of changes that have been made, where we are right now, and maybe even where did we begin. So the first slide is in the beginning. The discussions regarding grants manager, this is all the way back to 2019. In 2019, and really I think you could go back further, but they kind of started to develop, I think, and get more solid than what we had discussed in prior years to that. Also, in 2019, we were notified by Logan City, the mayor and their finance director called a meeting with our executive and with myself, and they notified us that they would no longer do the garbage billing for us that they had done in all the years past. Beginning in January of 2020, we would need to have our own solution for that. And so these two issues, although independent of each other, were kind of coming to a head at the same time. And what was ultimately proposed as a solution and adopted as a solution is that we could develop a position that would maybe address both of these issues. And so what we had initially was a financial analyst 3. This had gone by grants manager, grants coordinator, grants compliance officer, but presented or finally advertised as a financial analyst 3. Now, financial analyst is a job series that I have in the finance department. So we have a 1 and we have a level 2, and this was bringing on a level 3. And the idea was that they'd be able to handle grants management and compliance issues, but there was some concern that that wouldn't be a full-time position. But we needed a skill set that would be able to do that. So in addition to that, they would be handling some of the more advanced accounting issues like the capital assets management and some of the audit documentation things for our external audit, like Joan Simpkins was just here. And also to some degree, it was anticipated then that they would relieve some of the duties off of those other financial analysts and that they would then take on the new responsibilities for garbage billing. And so that's what we set out to do. That's what was adopted into the budget, and the position was advertised in August of 2019. It was short-lived. The job opening produced very few applicants and maybe very few qualified applicants. And in the end, we interviewed only 2 people. Those were the only 2 we felt like we could maybe make work. The problem was one was underqualified, but we thought, well, maybe close enough and we can do some training and get that individual set up. On the second one, who was really meeting those minimum qualifications, was really asking for quite a lot more than what we were offering. So we were in the neighborhood of, say, 50 grand a year. They were wanting 75 minimum. So we made the offer to the other candidate and hired that person late September, if I recall, of 2019. But by February of 2020, now we've taken on the garbage billing just barely. We let that person go. It just was not working out. Their skill set just was unfortunately not where it needed to be. So one of the things that we felt like we learned from that was the job mix actually didn't work very well. To bring us somebody who is good with numbers and likes to track numbers and do compliance maybe isn't the same person that loves to go out and meet people and generate opportunities and seek for new grants. So this time when we went out looking for a new person, we advertised a grants coordinator rather than a financial analyst 3. The idea here was still to try to make a shift in duties, but we felt like this had to be advertised in isolation. So we did that and had even a harder time recruiting. We just really didn't feel like anyone applying, which there weren't very many. was really going to have the skill set needed to produce these duties. So through discussions, rather than come back and say we're going to need maybe more money than we originally thought, we tried another option, and that was to say, let's hire some part-time people that can take on some of these accounting clerk type duties. We're going to relieve our financial analyst staff from having to do those types of duties with some part-time accounting clerks, and give them the opportunity to look at grants compliance and to seek for new grants. And so that's the way we moved last year. This would have been about the March timeframe last year. That discussion was had, it was actually in June of 2020 when we approved a budget to actually move some budget from part-time or from full-time employees to part-time employees to account for the expense we were going to have with these 2 part-time employees. So then, where are we now, or what happened with that? The transition from Logan City billing to the Cache County getting that billing done was getting more streamlined. You can imagine going through that transition as a customer or as one receiving those bills. A little bit of confusion with why is the city or why is the county having to bill me now instead of the city, even though none of my service changed at all. The county did add on some fees so that we could cover the cost of providing that service. We implemented a new online payment and electronic payment that we could waive those fees for whoever signed up, and we had a big campaign trying to get people to sign up for that electronic payments. So probably about 4 to 5 months into it, our foot traffic dramatically decreased, and our phone calls to the office over the garbage billing issue is dramatically decreasing. And so we saw that as an opportunity to try to continue that transition to giving those clerks more of that accounting clerk type work so we could free up the financial analyst staff. One of our people, one of those part-time workers, was really well suited to do that, and one just really felt like that wasn't going to work. And so we did let one go. And over the next couple of months, that part-time person who was now an accounting clerk went full-time so that we could move more of that to allow our financial analyst staff to take on grants management. So what have we found? And that was also late September of last year. So what we've found out since then kind of goes back to what we had wondered before. We have made improvements with documenting our grants, with having that ready for audit procedures, and even many of our agencies at the federal level have changed their methods, they've changed their websites, and how you apply and how you report and when you report. Those changes have been made, yet I feel like we've made improvements in how we're meeting those requirements. But I still see a fundamental difference in saying we're going to be complying with grants and reporting those grants versus seeking out new grants. And without anything negative to say about the staff that I have right now, I think we still need to look at some position that has and pays for better qualifications and experience for looking for new grant dollars. Even there's been some talk, maybe one discussion, where we talk about maybe we would advertise for a grant writer, and we would make that contingent on they would have to pull in enough grant dollars to pay for their position. That's not something that we've done yet in the past. Some are really favorable to that, but that's really not been anything more than a discussion at this point. But as far as trying to answer that question of where did that money go, is it shifted in need. Some of it, truthfully, has gone unspent. When we hired part-time accounting clerks, that was at a less market rate than a grant management person is. But again, when we tried to offer that position, we just weren't getting applicants for that position. So we've tried to make that switch and still accommodate the need that we have. My honest assessment is we still have a need, though. Any questions about that?
So the question being, we approved funds for a grant manager. I'm trying to remember, 2 years ago, it was presented to us, and I think it was the same time that we were starting to fund the position for the executive's assistant. Is that not correct? We did the two of them about the same
Yeah,
time.
that is true.
So we approved the money. Is it still in the budget, or what has happened?
Yeah, so it's still being utilized, but it's not, when we try to utilize it and say, hey, we're advertising and trying to hire a grants manager, we weren't getting people to apply for the position at the rate that we were offering. So what we decided to do instead was to say, well, let's take off some of that accounting and clerical work that we can put to a lower paid employee and try to see if the financial analyst staff can take on those duties. And I do believe they were successful in the compliance side of things. That we've gotten a lot more familiar with the federal agencies and websites that we have to file everything through. Our documentation of things isn't happening once a year under a big project, but we're able to monitor and maintain those things on an ongoing basis. But as far as saying we were hoping to have more grant dollars flowing into the county, we're not seeing that. And that's where I'm saying kind of my honest assessment there is that we've got to have, whether we went back to that original plan and had one grants person, I think we have to have more resources into that to attract the talent level that it requires.
Okay, the question I got is Terrell presented last meeting that she's been overseeing and taking care of a very important grant. She really doesn't want the job, and she really shouldn't have the job. What can we do to get someone to take that burden off of her?
So that one's a little bit different in what we're thinking here, because right now we have all the information that we need for that grant lies with outside attorneys' offices, and the real struggle that she's having there is compiling and getting all the information from those offices in order to report that. Now we can help report that for her. We can show that we've complied that and done all those things, but we would have the same problem that she's having in that we've got to rely on outside entities to get the information we need to report back to the state on those activities.
So we got someone actively taking care of what she has been taking care of, or is that still?
No, she still is after that, but that really, Terrell's here, I don't know, James not here, maybe Bryce is here. There's other ideas that have come forward to try to address that issue, but that's, I really feel like that's actually separate. This, let's say we had, even for the exact dollar amount we offered and we got that grants manager position in, that solution wouldn't solve this problem that you're asking about right now. We need to structure things a little bit different. Did you have a question, Dave?
I can have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just how you described everything is almost like you're talking about someone for search and seeking and with personality and you know, and going after these things.
Yeah.
Someone for administrating the grant and just overseeing. And you're having a heck of a time financially finding one person
that
to do
does
both.
Right. I mean,
they don't exist, or they just
well, you know, believe it or not, accountants
with a higher dollar bill.
Yeah, maybe, but you know, maybe contrary to popular belief, accountants aren't always charismatic people, right? So you've got a need for
popular belief.
Maybe it was just mine. I don't know, but you do kind of have a dynamic here, but there are unique individuals, and maybe she doesn't mind me pointing her out. In the county, I think Terrell is a great example of somebody who operates the day-to-day need of what that office is doing, but also is kind of that charismatic person to go and make contacts, come up with proposals that people, that make a lot of sense and that people are willing to fund because of her reputation and knowing what can be done with that. I think that is a similar type of job skill and personality set that we would be looking for in a grant writer. Somebody who not just can get familiar with, hey, this is how grants.govs work for the federal government, but somebody who's like, well, I've worked with these 20 nonprofits before and I know what they're looking for in awarding grants. And right now we don't really tap into the nonprofit world.
So is this something that we not have in-house, that we contract out, or?
We could try it on a contract basis. This is new for me too. The only way I've seen these in the past is it's called soft money. You hire somebody on soft money, right?
Yeah.
With the intent that they would be able to attract and receive grants to the county that would pay for or at least offset the cost of what their salary is, or at least, at the very least, be bringing in a lot more dollars than what their salary is. So one thing with grants is, not always the case, but often the case is grants aren't going to reduce the tax burden by any means. They may increase it to a degree because most grants will have some type of matching component with it, right? What it does though is it allows us to expand into programs that the county needs to be able to expand into, but are cost prohibitive, and they allow us to do it with a better bang for our buck.
Do we know what other counties are doing on these grants? Or do they have employees, or can we partner with any other county?
You know what, I can do some research on that, but I'm not aware of another county that just has a grant writer position and that's their focus.
Because I know with what Mr. Erickson brought up, there are those out there in the government section for the federal that were doing grant writing and everything else. It would seem that contracting or get another county to contract, because I don't know if we need a
Well, so we have a lobbyist, and we've done that at different levels from time to time for the federal government to try to get some of that. Not something that my office is overseeing. Usually that's run through the executive office, but I would be even, corporations give grants to governments, but you've got to have somebody who knows how to tap into that, ask for it, how to present that to a corporation that's appealing for them to then donate to the county.
Is that something UAC would have any knowledge on, Gina?
They might. I can ask them. I would think they might. I have a question, Cameron. Refresh my memory. This part-time employee that accepted full-time, what are they doing? Are they doing the billing? I'm not clear
Yes,
on
so
that.
they're handling all of, so at first, when we first tried to pull that in, we had some of the financial analyst staff was taking on that garbage billing. When we got this part-time and then went full-time, all of that duties went to that position.
They're doing full-time billing for garbage.
Well, and they're also doing AP work at this point. That's why. So we started loading more on there, and when they went full-time, that's when some of that AP work went to them too, because garbage billing by itself wasn't full-time.
So still in my mind, Cameron, we're talked a little bit grant writing. We've got some department heads that do a very good job at writing grants for their own departments and whatnot. But I think it was sold to us as a council that we needed somebody that after the grant was awarded to us that was able to follow through on the things that we need to perform in order to keep that grant in check.
Yes.
And we're not, I don't think we're even close to having a person in that situation, are we?
No, so the resources are then divided. So we changed a position, and they're taking responsibilities from financial analyst staff that then picked up those types of responsibilities. So the resources that were dedicated are still going to that type of a service, but split among multiple positions rather than one grants manager position. What I'm saying is, in addition to that, I think we would still want to be able to develop out a better grants program for Cache County. I don't think we've put enough resources there at this point that I would say, hey, we're there and this is great and we don't need to do anything else. I think even some of our discussions going back to 2019 or before were not only for compliance reasons and make sure we could maintain grants, but it was to seek out new grants. And that's the piece that I feel like we just have not been able to address with what we have been given.
I'm kind of getting the feel that it's a lot easier to get grant writers than it is to get grant overseers. Is that kind of what we're finding out?
Seekers.
Yeah, and especially trying to make that the same person was exceptionally difficult.
Personality is right. Usually there's a person that's energetic and getting grants written is not the same type of a person that pictures the numbers and looks at deadlines and gets all that kind of stuff so that we stay compliant. I think they're two different personalities.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the two different strategies that we've implemented so far, I think we verified that kind of thought process that people gravitate by nature, I think, to what they're good at, right? And so when you ask some accounting staff to manage a grant, we gravitate really well to, well, we're going to track the expenses and we're going to make sure our compliance boxes are checked. We're going to get our reporting done. And then if I have time, we're going to ask for some new grants if I know where to look, right? What we do need is somebody who's like, well, good, we got staff that can take care of all that. I'm going to go look for some new grant money. And I think that's the component that we're still missing.
I think that's probably what we've been doing. So I guess in the future, we still need to address the fact that we need to find the person with the understanding and also a person with the ability and experience to administer grants.
Yeah, and I think there's a
Grants
certain,
that's been awarded, not grants that are coming in. I mean, grants they're seeking.
yeah, to seek out those new grants. And even as they receive new grants, then I think we're suited to where we can monitor for compliance on those grants and make sure that they're reported correctly. So part of what Jason Slight was here and he was just really quickly showing was that our compliance and monitoring over their grants is sufficient for their auditing standards. Where I would like to see that still improve is the way we document and are ready for those audits rather than on a big project basis that we have to scramble to get done. It's more a routine basis that we know we've done our own testing, and so that we know when the auditor comes in, we can show them the tests that we've done, and their work becomes much quicker and easier for them to do.
Executive Zick, you had something?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted to say, I remember a couple of years ago when the council approved funding for a grants person, and I remember seeing that at the time and thinking what a great idea that was. I felt like that was wise of the council to invest funds in grant seeking. I've been involved in a number of organizations over the years who have made the decision to invest in somebody to go after funds, and every time it's paid off. If you get somebody good in there, they'll pay for their salary many times over. But I do recognize that we're talking about two different types of positions. Somebody to be a grant writer is different than somebody to do grant compliance. When I came to the county 4.5 months ago, one of the things I started doing was going around to the departments, meeting staff, and at one point I thought to myself, where's that grant writer I remember the council authorizing? And I found out at the time that the county didn't have somebody in that position. So it's on my to-do list. It's a long to-do list, and I haven't gotten to it yet. But at that point, I did put it on my to-do list as something that I would like to make sure gets resolved. My recommendation would be that we have both, that we have people to work on grants compliance. But I think that's kind of putting the cart before the horse, because first you have to go get the grants. And I think having somebody to go and seek grants and actively bring that revenue into the county is something that we should be focusing on. My recommendation would be that I would volunteer to work with staff to come up with a proposal to see how we could get somebody on board to do that. And then after that, the next step, get somebody for compliance. So if that's something the council's still interested in, which it sounds like you are, we will work at the staff level to make sure we put together a plan to address your concerns.
You know, my challenge in understanding what you just shared with us is absolutely that's what you're saying is true. But we've already got a bunch of grants that we have been awarded. I don't know if they're being taken care of.
Yeah, no, they're not being in order. You'd have seen that in our audit report just now. When Joan Simpkins was here, one of the very things they have to do is specific audit tests on federal grants, and that lends itself well to state grants as well. And what they are finding there is there aren't any material findings, there's no instances of noncompliance and those kinds of issues. My concern isn't that we're not addressing them or that we're not being compliant, is that if something derailed, we wouldn't know it soon enough. Because we kind of set things up to be controlled properly, monitored on a spend basis. But there's a lot of moving parts that you want to know quickly. Maybe taking an example out of somewhere else, how fast does your ambulance respond if something goes wrong? This is the kind of idea where I'm at right now, is I feel like we've addressed issues and we're doing sufficient, but as we get more grants in, and as you've known, as the dollar amounts get bigger and bigger, last year and this year we've taken on enormous grants, that if something derailed, would we know it fast enough, and how expensive would it be if we don't find out soon enough? And so I want to be able to monitor those on a much more regular basis than what we're able to do with the resources we have right now. So additional help on grants compliance would be welcomed into my office. But I do think the priority would be to start with a grant writer position. Seeing those dollars start flowing in for multiple different programs, I think, is the best next step.
You know, I keep hearing that we want to get more and more and more grants, but I guess I have to go back to my farmer thing. I got somebody out buying cows and buying cows and buying cows, haven't got anybody feeding them, and there's going to be a crash eventually.
How much of our budget is grants right now?
Well, right now is kind of unusual because we got almost 12 million last year from the CARES Act, right? And we've got a little bit more than we did last year from the fiscal recovery fund now this year. We'll get that again next year. If you go back before that, you know, shooting from the hip, I'd say you're looking at anywhere between a fifth and a third. Maybe that's not real narrow, but it's not, yeah, it's a material amount for sure. But again, in looking at saying, hey, let's take a next step, it wouldn't be let's take some of our existing resources and hope. It's kind of that idea of a soft money that this person would bring in more than what they're spending out, kind of an idea on a salary. But again, that it would be helping the county to expand into areas that we haven't been able to do before, if that makes sense.
So Cameron, thinking about of the report that was just given to us of the millions of dollars that have come into the county in the last 12 months, was it possible to use any of that money to have a grant overseer and a grant compliance officer? Could we use some of that money for that?
So grants get really specific. So yes, but it wouldn't pay for the whole position for all their wages and benefits. What it would say is it will pay for administration of the grant. So especially the CARES Act money or this fiscal recovery fund, which we have now, it'll cover administrative cost. But if that person is working on something else that's not that fund, now it won't pay for those hours. Does that make sense? A different grant would have to pay for the administrative costs on those grants.
There was, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of a handful of those big, large grants that came in. Administrative, why they should have been able to fund.
Yeah.
I'll let you know that
quite a portion of the salary.
UAC, I just found out today, we are looking at, and we will have a board meeting scheduled for UAC to hire a grants manager to help the counties track and report on the ARPA funds.
Yeah.
So the county will have to pay a little more in dues for that, but with that going into 2024,
right.
The board is supportive of that, or the executive committee is supportive of that, but it needs to go to the board. So that's going to be helpful for the funds that we are getting.
Well, you know, we pretty well beat this to death, and I'm just thinking, you know, if we're taking care of the grants and we feel well enough in your office that the grants that are under house are being overseen and we're not going to get ourselves in trouble, then there's not a lot that we can say that's wrong. So,
Cameron?
Right, yeah.
But what you're saying, from what you presented up here, we're not willing to pay enough money to get someone qualified for that? Is that part of the issue?
That's what we've experienced, yeah. So
how much would we need to increase that to get a qualified person that wants to come in at a decent wage?
Yeah, so I probably would need to do some more work with HR on that, because even from the last time we tried to get that specific was a year ago. And that's a whole other subject to talk about what our wage market's doing in the last couple of years, right? But what we experienced a year ago is that what we were offering was not attracting people that were qualified for the position.
And so if we don't...
Not even almost. It wasn't like, oh, geez, I wish they had one more year of experience, and then we would have hired them. This was like, I could have hired my high school kids, and they would have done just as well as what it looked like to me. That's harsh in a way, but not knocking my kids. They're smart kids. But they're not experienced for these types of activities, right? And that's what the applicants we were getting. So that's why we took a change in strategy.
Council, would anyone be interested in making a motion to have Executive Zook and Cameron look more into this and bring a proposal back?
Before we make that motion, can I just make an observation that most of this money is probably federal money. The feds aren't just sort of broke. They're unbelievably broke. And I don't know that it's a great idea to keep jumping on that train and try to figure out how we can tap more money from somebody that's broke. And they can pretend for a long time. Hell, they could probably pretend as long as I'm alive. But at some point in time,
There are other grants, though, state grants and
True.
nonprofit grants, as were mentioned.
True, but most of the nonprofit get their money from feds.
I think there's a lot of partnerships that are developed within businesses and everything through grants. And more so than, like, say, federal grants and things like that. And but grants are one of those things, I know with directors and department heads, that, boy, if I go do this, it's gonna add this onto my load, it's gonna do that, and it does. It just, you can literally, you can, by getting more, you can create such a burden on you that you can't, you feel like you can't pass it on.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this so tough, is that there needs to be, in other words, the director or the department heads, when they find the possible grant, they need someone to go to, will you help me get this? You know, will you help me get to this? You know, and then when will you help us get this? Okay, will you follow it on? Will you make sure that the scope, sequence, everything is followed, and the timeline and everything to administer it? Just because otherwise it adds more and more burden on those people that are, you know, that directors and department heads, it can literally just start burning people out. And
I think even that's part of what deters it right now. From my perspective in the finance department, we see we're internal service, and we're going to help you report your grants, track your grants, and we would even like to help you seek after those grants. But now we're stepping way outside of what we're educated and trained to do, to try to understand the world of public safety or the world of anywhere else. A lot of our grants are public safety, right? But I got to understand that world. Now I got to learn who my contacts are, and now I got to try to make a proposal. Well, the sheriff already knows that whole world, and so if you get somebody who's talented in seeking after grants, and he works with the sheriff or she works with the sheriff, and they come up with some ideas of what they want, and then let somebody go after that, whether it be from federal, state, or nonprofit or corporations, you know, that they can start looking for money that would help build that program. Then that person just, you know, coordinates with the sheriff. The sheriff doesn't have to be in charge of the whole thing or take time to administer the whole thing, and then try to pass stuff on to the finance department so that we can start finding out the checks and balances that need to be in place for it. We don't have that time to be that specialist for all the other departments. But you know, you hire a few people in, and that could really make a huge difference.
Council, what would you like to do?
I guess I keep thinking back to 2 years ago when I thought we had given direction to the county executive to go and find someone to oversee grants, and so we're right back to the thing where we're going to say, okay, we're going to allocate some money to go find somebody. So we've been 2 years, and now we want to throw some more money at it. But that's apparently what we're going to have to do.
I got a question for Sean. Oh, he woke up, okay. I mean, your department, what you do is, there's a lot of grants that are available statewide and that I'm always hearing about and everything. You've kind of been involved in a lot of those things. Could you just, in 30 seconds or less, could you...
Would you solve our problem for us?
Make sure you use 80s references.
Make sure to use what, 80s movie references?
Yeah.
Something I'm fond of doing in presentations.
Seriously, I've heard you talk on several different things about, you know, this grant came in and you were able to capitalize on this, and so I'm kind of curious as to...
Yeah, it's a great question, Councilman. I appreciate it. From ARPA and CARES Act, we all know that the last year has provided some unique funding opportunities that are dominantly towards infrastructure, which lends itself to economic development, or economic development specifically, or like SB 95, which is in part funding my position and is at least available for the next year. Grants are a fairly common aspect of economic development through the EDA, Economic Development Administration in DC. There are a multitude of EDA-sponsored grants. So you're right, and most of those are technical in nature, something that Councilman Gordy mentioned earlier about certain personality types. Oftentimes in economic development circles, a grant writer is largely technical because it's seen as you've got certain requirements that need to be met, and it's as simple as making sure that the submitted documentation, you know, checks off that they've provided that kind of metric, whatever that might be for the particular types of grants. it is someone that needs to be networked, to know the right parties to ask. Because usually there is much an aggregator of information. I was looking for Terrell, she was still in the audience. Somebody that gathers information that's from other parties that they might know part of the application data set, and then making sure that it's readable as well. So the short answer, yes. I feel like it's a bit of a pregnant question with something
It
more
is,
to follow.
But I know every time I turn around, it seems like economic development has all these, grant this, from rural Utah. And there's just constant, seems like a lot of things available from the state of Utah and businesses and so forth. And that's why I'm saying you're kind of in the middle of a lot of that. And that's what I was trying to get your input, and you've declared quite a bit of it very, very well. So I was trying to get your input on what we really look for to be able to find those dynamic things, and if they're worth pursuing.
I think, we keep talking about dynamic person to acquire grants. What do you suggest we do for the type of, to write up a request for someone to put in an application that would do very well at overseeing and administrating grants? That's what I'm more concerned about.
Well, and I think Cameron mentioned it earlier by calling it soft money. It's very common in grant writing circles, whether by contractors, an expectation like a quota, if they're in-house, to have a portion of whatever the grant is that goes towards administrative fees. Anymore, especially in federal and state grants, you're going to have a maximum that you can attribute of the grant award towards administrative overhead, because it's expected that you pay individuals based upon how much money they can go out and get. So in some ways, like when you phrase it like that, or build out a program like that, you're almost making them a commissioned salesperson, which can be advantageous for a government entity, because particularly if they're contract, you're not paying something out if they're not bringing it home. And with prior experience, our health department had specific jobs for grant writers. Before we would approve them in my prior role, we would look at the job description, and it had language therein that said, while you're an in-house employee, we reserve the right that if that grant goes away, I think to Councilman Borup's commentary about the federal government, if this grant goes away, your position is no longer. And, I'm not going to weigh in on HR sensitive issues. I'll let Amy do that. But, that had passed the muster in our county as a way of making sure we weren't keeping people on if that grant went away that was funding their positions. So I think that there's, several great examples out there already that we could mimic. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean. Council, it sounds like there's some interest in this and that we could get some more details and look at this more. So without objection, I will put this on our next meeting's agenda. Any objection? Okay, thank you, Sean. Okay, we're going to move to item 7B, Senior Citizen Center, and we have a report from Giselle Madrid, who is the director. Giselle.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I do a brief introduction?
Oh, please. Thank you very much.
Giselle Madrid runs our senior center, and I've had a couple of opportunities to meet with her and tour her facility over the last couple of months, and I just want you to know that I've been so impressed with what she's doing over there. And she took me on a tour around the facility and showed me a number of projects that she has been working on over the last year. When unfortunately they had to shut down because of the pandemic, but that doesn't mean they stopped working. I think in many ways they kicked it up a notch. I had an opportunity to go to an event she held recently to thank her volunteers, and during that event she gave a little speech about all of the things she'd been doing over the last year, and I thought this needs to come to the county council, and I thought you would all want to hear about the incredible things they've been doing at the senior center. So anyways, with that introduction, Giselle.
Thank you. I did happen to bring the little video presentation for the volunteer appreciation. If there's time, we can share it. Do you remember that little thank you that the community gave to the Meals on Wheels volunteers? If there's time, we can share it. If not, I understand we might be running out of time. But thank you for this opportunity. Like he said, I did do a little report to all our volunteers just a few weeks ago. We hosted a thank you dinner to all those volunteers that give of their time there at the senior center. And I want to apologize ahead if I get emotional. It's very dear to my heart, and so senior centers serve as a gateway to the nation's aging network, connecting older adults to vital community services that can help them stay healthy and independent. Research shows that older adults who participate in senior center programs can learn to manage and delay the onset of chronic disease and experience measurable improvements in their physical, social, spiritual, emotional, mental, and economic well-being. Our senior center offers a wide variety of programs and services, including meal and nutrition programs, information and assistance, health and fitness and wellness programs, transportation services, public benefit counseling, Medicare counseling, social and recreational activities, educational programs, and lastly, even intergenerational programs. A little bit of history. The Cache County Senior Citizen Center had their grand opening on September 20th, 1975. I shared with those in attendance that as we have been moving things around in the center, we found boxes of photo albums of all of the newspaper clippings that someone had been saving that showed how the senior center came into existence. And as I've read through that and kind of learned through the process of it all, I learned that after much deliberation between the county and the city, this was a welcome relief for the older adults of this county. Before this, the Cache County Council on Aging was housed in a building on Main Street. The council used this building for many events, which included lunchtime one time a week. But unfortunately, there was a sale of the property in 1970, which led to the task of finding a new home, which became the #1 goal. In reading the newspaper article, I was very proud to read that older adults have always had to fight and work hard to get what they have wanted. And it is this way today. The senior center has been here for 46 years in that exact same location. The center has provided such amazing resources and services to this county. The goal and the mission has always been the same: to ensure that older adults live healthy and independent lives. We support all individuals in this desire, and it is through programs like the Meals on Wheels and the activities and resources provided here that we can achieve this goal. In reading the newspaper clippings, there was an article that came about that stated that it was estimated that this was in 1972, that by 2025 there would be 12,000 older adults living in Cache County. But guess what? There are close to 12,000 in 2020 already. So did you guys know that every day 10,000 baby boomers are retiring daily? How will this affect Cache County, and what will Cache County look like by 2030? It's hard to know, but we do know that by 2030, our society as a whole will be experiencing something that none other has experienced. As we move through the 21st century, more Americans, more than ever, will be in their 7th, 8th, and 9th decades all together, living together. It is estimated that by 2030, there will be 74 million individuals aged 65 and older, more than twice the number that happened in 2000. What does this mean for Cache County Senior Center? What does this soon social institutions that serve the older population will be challenged to respond to these baby boomers, just like it had to respond in the 1960s with the school systems that were forced to react to the soaring enrollments of this cohort. The older adults' voices are being heard now on a national level. Many policies and legislations have been passed because of their needs that have been seen and heard. Examples of housing, Medicare, aging services, nutrition services like Meals on Wheels and congregate programs, and much more. It's under Meals on Wheels Appreciation 1, MP3. In 2019, a CDBG grant with Cache County was written for a new Meals on Wheels truck and a new bus for the senior center. With the purchase of the new Meals on Wheels truck, it allowed for us to create a new route for the Northwest. So we're heading out to Clarkston and Mendon. This is allowing us to access more of our rural areas, and it shortened the other route that had been taking approximately 3.5 hours to complete. This allowed for our clients to receive their meals earlier and to save us miles and maintenance on their vehicles. With the growth over the years, the center has adapted to the constant changes. Before COVID, there were many mandatory updates needed to our building. For example, we had a roof that needed work that was beyond patching. We then had uneven tile floors in the multipurpose room, which was causing a trip hazard for clients. When the estimators came to give an estimate, they requested to have it tested since it was original flooring to the building. That led us to finding asbestos in the tile and in our popcorn ceiling. We then had to have that fixed, which then once that was finished, we were able to upgrade the lights in our offices to LED lights, which has brightened the senior center, the rooms, and the offices. In addition to this, we've moved rooms, torn down walls, replaced furniture, lighting, carpet, painted, and done so much more to this old building. We even were able to redo the parking lot through the Logan City CDBG grant. With COVID relief funds, we were able to purchase new furniture, get rid of that old cloth furniture that we had, and now have leather furniture that can be wiped down. We were able to purchase a water ice maker dispenser, tables and chairs for the cafeteria that can easily be moved and put away properly for the custodian for safety. This year, it was budgeted for the purchase of a new double oven, stove, steamer, and combi oven for our kitchen, all which were greatly overdue. Our double oven became a single oven. Our combi oven became only functionable with a paper clip inside of it, and our stove only had 2 working burners, so it was time. We purchased new, with the monies from CARE funds through the Area Agency on Aging, we were able to purchase new Meals on Wheels bags, which these nice bags are able to plug into the cigarette lighters in the cars, which allows the bags to be heated throughout the whole delivery service. In addition, our kitchenette was updated to modern cabinetry and new storage, which allowed us to replace the 46-year-old 70s style cabinets that were still there. This improvement has helped in the Meals on Wheels area by launching a much smoother and organized system. In 2018, we served 49,708 meals. In 2019, that number jumped to 50,884. And in 2020, we are now to 56,826 meals. I commend the kitchen for being able to prepare so many meals with such a small staff, and to our Meals on Wheels staff who did close to 400 assessments in 2020. With only 2 staff members, that is quite an accomplishment. 14,380 meals in 2020 were congregate, and 42,446 were Meals on Wheels. Our Meals on Wheels volunteers gave 6,083 hours of service. Adding more clients not only increased our number of meals, but also the number of routes and volunteers it takes to deliver those meals each day. Since the pandemic hit, Cache County Meals on Wheels has increased by 4 routes. This also means that we have added over 20 new drivers to our existing 75 volunteers to cover those routes. It wasn't always easy, but our volunteers rose to the occasion and made sure that our clients continue to receive their meals during this rough time in our community. COVID-19 impacted the Cache County Senior Citizen Center in many ways. We as a team rallied together and began planning and doing all we could do to still provide the necessary needs for this population. With the center shut down for 13 months, we did not stop our services. We first began with telephone reassurance phone calls. In this, we were able to reach our most vulnerable clients and have phone conference calls with about 8 clients at a time. We partnered with the Bear River Association of Aging, and they were able to provide 500 72-hour emergency kits to our clients, which we distributed. Since March of 2020 until now, we have had 2,848 points of service of telephone reassurance calls. We also called individuals every day and visited our clients with an activity packet that we left on their doors. And to make sure we were being safe, we had the visit right on the doorstep, which allowed us to have a quick conversation for a visit. But that didn't stop us. We still continued. Our amazing team began with the task of finding creative ways to interact with our senior community. We had parking lot bingo in the early morning to stay cool. We had craft and cooking classes outside. We offered to-go lunches to those individuals that could walk up to the center. And at this time, I really personally want to just thank all of the Cache County employees who came, along with the county council, that took their time of their busy schedule, including our previous executive. I know, Barbara, you came a couple times. Heartfelt thank you for coming right when COVID first hit. We shut everything down and asked our volunteers to just wait a minute. And I was so grateful that the county came through and our employees stepped up. And it was such a beautiful thing to see everyone so worried and concerned. We also thought of new ways to play games through social media, and we interacted with the ever-growing social network. Since COVID-19 from March 2020 to now, we've had 69,000 views on our Facebook page and Instagram pages for all of our various events. We posted information on fraud, Medicare information, and even emergency preparedness. With this came the idea to partner with USU and the Utah Assistive Technology Program. This program provided tablets to be rented out for free so that our clients who did not have access to this would still be able to join us in our events. Our clogging, Tai Chi, Sit and Be Fit instructors began teaching these classes monthly and streaming them live on Facebook, allowing individuals to be participating with us. This allowed us to be ever present in the lives of our clients. It was daunting to have such a presence, but we have come to see just how much patrons love interacting with us on social media. They want to feel connected to the place that they love, to see their friends, and most importantly, feel connected to our program. We partnered with the Bear River Health Department and called 1,300 registered clients to inform them of the vaccination availability. We then provided a list of homebound clients to the health department who wanted a vaccination. They then went above and beyond and sent nurses to these homebound clients and was able to give them the vaccination. We provided transportation to those clients that needed the vaccination as well, and I believe at that time we did it down at the fairgrounds. We had a partnership with the food bank, which continues to serve about 190 clients monthly and giving them basic food commodities. We met this year with 371 clients that needed questions about Medicare, 350 hours that was worth for the year of 2020. We understood the need to take care not only of our own mental health as a staff, but also our clients' mental health. We partnered with Utah Strong Project and offered mental health presentations, allowing clients to visit with the trained personnel about their concerns with COVID-19. With much support, my amazing team at the center, though we may be small in numbers, worked hard and gave 110% to everyone that we served. With the help along with our volunteers and our community partnerships, we've been able to be successful in providing such needed services. Now that the Senior Center is back and open with congregate setting for lunch as well as Meals on Wheels, all of our activities and our calendars are up and running. We were not expecting to see such a huge participation. Just 2 days ago, we had 90 people reserved for congregate lunch with our Meals on Wheels of 200 individuals. Because we knew we were going to open, we mailed out a new registration form to all of our clients, and as of today, we have 1,300 individuals still registered with the Senior Center. New clients are coming daily. Some are senior citizens, others are just individuals that are finding us as a resource to the community to help them with Medicare issues, housing issues, transportation issue, immigration issues, and even translation issues. We are seeing that we are growing, and we are seeing this effect in our activities. We have a multi-purpose room and a library, and we are seeing that everyone wants to be at the Senior Center from 8 to 11, and with all the activities, that makes it a little bit difficult. For example, Bridge Group wants to meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 12 to 4 in the library. That limits us in that space for educational classes, etc. Tai Chi wants to meet in the multi-purpose room every day, so balancing their different requests has been quite the challenge, and it's evident that we have outgrown our space. But we will continue to juggle and balance everything we can do to give our best effort and do our part so that the center continues to be a vibrant and fun place to be. And that was my presentation. I know it was long-winded, but were you guys able to find the video?
How long is the video?
How long is the video? I want to say it was like 10 minutes, so it might be too long.
I think that's too long, but is there a link that we could send to the council?
We can definitely share that. We can definitely share that link. Yeah.
Can you put it in the folder so that we can?
And this was just volunteers that were, these were recipients of Meals on Wheels and also recipients of visitors of the center, thanking the volunteers for their time.
Well, that'll be wonderful to watch. If you can put that in the folder, then the council can see that.
You should watch it, you'll love it.
Council, do you have any questions?
I just have a comment. I've trained a couple people, and they love doing Meals on Wheels. And in fact, I referred another person, and she was so excited that she was accepted to do that. And then I also had some interaction with Roger Yost, and he was he's so excited to do Tai Chi.
Yes,
down there.
every day.
He's awesome. Yes, thank you for all you do down there.
Thank you. Okay.
So thank you. Could we get a copy of your report too? I'd like to
Definitely.
like put that in the minutes or something, because there's some really good information there.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, we are 10, number 10? Am I right, Barbara? Double check
Yep.
me. Okay. So
We
we're,
have no Board of Equalization matters, it looks like.
that's
so.
right, we did the public hearing, so we are at our pending action, resolution to amend the 2021 Cache County budget. This afternoon, Cameron sent us an email saying that he updated page 3, page 15, and 16. Cameron, do you have a minute? You could quick explain that to council in case they missed that, so they know what they're voting on tonight.
So, I'll bring this up again. I'm a visual guy. So, let's go over, there was some email that's gone back and forth on this issue as well. This is on, am I up there yet? This is my family. So on the left is Tegan, he's my third. Trevin is next, he's getting married, but I don't know, because that's my computer, but I don't know how come this is not. Oh, you know what, I wonder if it extended, let's see. Try my mouse. That'll help if I turn my mouse on.
You were on the other screen.
There we go.
Cursor was on the other screen. There you go.
There we go. Okay, this will be more interesting to you probably. If you want to talk about my kids, we'll talk later. In elections, the original budget proposal had a transfer out of this account 740 right here, capitalized equipment, of $11,000. And that was putting $10,000 into a seasonal employee with associated payroll taxes of $1,000 into the 130 account. That request is being somewhat offset by revenue that will come from municipalities as we bill them for doing the municipal election services. So that's been reduced down to $3,500 with $3,000 going into the seasonal employees and $500 going into the associated payroll tax and benefit line. Now that is the only change to the original documents. Every other change I put on these last 2 pages entitled it Budget Amendment Additions. And the format of these is usually we'll say here's what the current budget is, and so here's what the proposed changes would add up to. In this case, I'm adding on to those proposed changes and saying here's what the additional amounts would affect. So if we walk through these few issues, one issue is the certified tax revenue. So we always estimate that as a county. We don't know what the values are before we can say it, and so we kind of make our best estimates. At this stage of the game, we know what those numbers are, and the state has certified what our rate is and what revenue that will generate for us. And so the rate actually is a little lower than what we had estimated, but the revenue coming from that is a little bit higher. So we're in the general fund on our general tax levy are adding $157,000. And this is not from like a tax increase, this is the certified tax rate revenue. So there was no tax increase, just our estimate needs to be adjusted upward. In addition to that, we have some intergovernmental revenues. $99,200 is coming from the state for election purposes. And this is related to the ES&S. We've dealt with them before over election issues. All of this money is to be spent with that vendor over election issues. And then in addition to that, we have, as I was just mentioning, contract revenue for providing election services to municipalities. They'll be paying for those services, and we had not added that into the budget yet. And so there's $102,400 that we're estimating for that. On the expense side then, where does all that get spent? That first $7,500, that's the difference on that elections request. This is being offset by the contract revenue, and then the remainder of it is going into this account, which is a new account so that we can keep track of this municipal election services. So everything that we spend then will be spent out of this account. We can make sure that we bill back for that appropriately, with the exception of that revenue for personnel, we've got to expense in revenue accounts so that we can properly report, or excuse me, in payroll accounts so that we can properly report that externally. And then a direct offset into a special grant expense for elections for that ES&S grant. The tax revenue, if you'll recall, in the original amendment, we have, or in the original budget, all the way back to what we started with in January, we have a contribution going into our fund balance. So we had more revenue than expenses for the current year. With the amendment in March, and then more so with the June amendment, we have several requests for reducing the contribution to fund balance so that it can be utilized in the current year. What this is saying here is the additional tax revenue will help offset those costs. And so this is listed as a contribution to fund balance. But when taking this contribution, taken with the request to pull money out, it will still be a net amount coming out of fund balance, or a reduction to what's going into fund balance. If I say it 3 different ways, is that more confusing? We have money going in, we're requesting some to come out. This will request that some go back in, but the net effect is some will still be, the contribution will be reduced in total.
So we still have some going in.
Yeah, we do still have some that is going in, just less than what we had originally. Same issue here with our tax administration fund. There's 2 tax levies there. Both of them have to do with the assessing and collecting process and distribution of tax revenues to other entities. The first rate is called the multi-county rate. Essentially, this is dictated to us by the state, and we pass the revenue on to the state for centralized assessing type purposes. So that rate was actually a little bit higher than what we estimated, and the revenue, relatively speaking, was quite a lot higher by almost 38% at $80,000. The local or the county assessing collecting rate was a little bit more similar to the general fund. The rate was a little bit lower than what we estimated, with revenues being a little bit higher, relatively speaking. In the tax administration fund, we were using a fund balance, so the proposal here is to just use less of our fund balance to make our operations work for the current year. In the health fund, this is the 3rd fund where we have a tax levy, so it has the same effect. This one somewhat smaller than the others at 2,000, or even less than 0.5% different. But just truing up to what that certified tax rate process ended at. The last adjustment then has to do with our Children's Justice Center. Speaking of grants, knowing that we still had some need on the facility, the new CJC building, Terrell sought after some, saw an opportunity, and it's acquired a grant for the county of $95,800. And so that's being offset with the expense line for the new building. Now, there's a lot of gears turning, I guess, related to that issue. I do expect we'll come back in September at our next scheduled budget amendment, and there'll be some more issues going on with that, but right now they're not resolved. So this one, however, is secured, and actually has to be spent by June 30th. So we're relating it back to expenditures that we have on the facility. We just need to adopt that into the budget in order to take advantage of that. And those are all the changes. So, any questions on those from anyone? Okay.
Thank you, Cameron. Council, do you have any other questions on the budget? Things that you want to talk about in there, changes that need to be made?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2021-11, resolution to amend the 2021 Cache County budget.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been made and seconded to approve resolution 2021-11, amending the 2021 Cache County budget. Is there any further discussion?
I got a couple questions on a few items that kind of still raises my dander a little bit on some things. Is that, and I remember receiving a letter here during the week. I'm kind of curious as to where, for example, we have, I know in the Visitors Bureau, we have some monies that's coming from the fund, some residual fund or some fund balance that you are holding out there.
The reserve account.
To fund projects that I know, I think I think one of them was actually, was that denied in the RAPS program?
Julie, do you want to come up to the mic so we can get you on record and you can?
One was actually, I thought, denied in the RAPS program. The American West Heritage one, I thought that was a new one, isn't it?
That is new.
And the microphone one is a new one.
New one,
And then the Summerfest was part of, I guess, an application that didn't get in time.
That was a request that was
My fault. That came from me to her board, to the board. I'll take responsibility for that.
But to see if the Visitors Bureau would be willing to provide a sponsorship with some of those funds that we have in our reserve fund. We were able to negotiate that in such a way that the benefits will be beneficial for us for a couple of years, because we didn't want to have that level of sponsorship in 1 year. So we're providing the funding for them now, and the benefits will continue for a couple of years, which will be really great. As far as the other project goes, I think you're referring to the Lyrics request for building funds for a new project to do a Christmas carol in downtown Logan. And when I found out about that project, I was unaware that they had even applied for RAPS funding. They told me about the possibility of producing this show downtown, and I immediately was intrigued and impressed, thinking from our Visitors Bureau perspective, I'm constantly looking for things during the December months that we can attract people to come here, especially from surrounding areas where they, like Montpelier or Evanston, or those areas where they have to go shopping somewhere. So why don't they come to Logan and stay overnight in our hotels, do some things and spend money while they're shopping? And so this would bring that activity to the downtown area, and it would do so in a time after most of the holiday events have rolled up, which is like December 10th, practically every year. And so I happened to have a board meeting the very next day, and I proposed this to my board, and that advisory board consists of, members, a broad base of members from the Mayor's Association and from the county, from the Lodging Association, Outdoor Recreation, Trails, Utah State University, anyway. And they were all so excited that they suggested that we be able to invest some seed funding in them to be able to use to get those funds matched in order to help this project happen. That happened in April. It was already after RAPS tax applications had been due, yet the response had not been made by the RAPS committee. So there was nothing on our board's part had any knowledge that it was going before the RAPS tax at all. And so that wasn't part of the board's decision or recommendation. So it certainly wasn't. I can see from your perspective, it might look like, oh, they got denied, and now here you are asking for money. It probably looks like it's the back door, but it actually happened completely separate from RAPS tax and unknowing that there had been an application made. And it's an investment that my board felt strongly that would be a good one for our community.
Okay, and this fund balance that is in your department, can I ask, where is the money coming from that's building that?
The money that's coming from is from the transient room tax, and we are.
It's all TRT tax.
Yes, and it's required that it be used in a specific reserve fund, that it can only be used for projects that are listed. I have the legislation for that itemizes those projects you're probably familiar with.
That is where that fund balance is coming from. It's not coming from the regular budget that the county council approves.
No, and that money, most of the budget actually for it from the county council comes from transient room tax. Is that?
I don't want to take your mic, but I want to clarify a little bit the way you said that. All of that money does.
Cameron, will you come up here so everyone can hear you?
Yeah, so it is all coming from transient room tax. Because that is a specialized tax like restaurant tax, RAPS tax, or even the COG funding, those are separated out and away from the general fund, and they have their own fund. So the general fund has a fund balance. Anytime, we were talking about that a little bit, anytime there's more revenue than we have expenses, then it goes to the fund balance. In the business, we call it equity, right? You have your assets, liabilities, and equities, and when you have revenue more than your expenses, it closes out to your equity. In government, we just call it fund balance for semantic type reasons. In this case, TRT is the revenue. You do have some small grant revenues as well. Presumably those are spent. And so anytime there's unspent budget money that was maybe approved, or even if it was just approved to be a contribution to the fund balance, anytime we have revenue above what we have in expenditures, it closes out to the fund balance of the Visitors Bureau fund, not to the general fund. And it's kept separate, and that has accumulated over the years. And so what she's requesting right now is that those funds be reappropriated into the budget and be allowed to be used for these purposes.
I guess what I'm after is that the public needs to know that this fund balance that's working, that's been accruing, is specifically tied to limitations.
Yeah, it's transient room tax.
And isn't part of a budget that's getting set aside and then built.
Right.
Separate.
Correct.
I mean, that's, I think it's very important that public knows that, and
Yeah.
that we know that too.
Okay, so she said very rightly, so it's her origin is transient room tax, and that has to be maintained and kept separate to be spent only on eligible expenses for the transient room tax.
Thank you.
Cameron, one other question that's in my mind, where it is a tax, it's the county council's, assignment from those who elect us, that we're the ones that disperse the tax money.
Yes.
Even though it's coming into a fund that Julie has quite a bit to do with, still when that money needs to be allocated, it has to be approved by the council, and that's what I'm assuming is happening right now.
Yes, so that's why this proposal is coming to you right now.
And, you know, I'm assuming that the board that she talks about is, of course, a very good board and everything, but still it's pending on, you know, the council being the one that decides that in the end, you either get it or you don't.
Yes, that's
Because
true.
it is decided among each other that it's a good project, it still needs to be presented to the council and get a favorable vote that it is going to be that way.
Yes.
We've had a little bit of trouble with that in a few years back, that they want, you know, the council wants to do something different than what that committee wants to do. And we don't want to overstate our authority or anything, but we still are ones that have to be convinced that what they want to do with it is something that we want to have done with it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true in the case of RAPS tax and restaurant that has that advisory committee that makes those presentations. The COG road funding is the same way. And then this, I believe it's a TAP committee, is how it's specified in the law, is the same thing. Those recommendations come to the county council, and the council could say, you know what, don't like how a single dollar of that's being proposed, we're going to do something different. Or you could see it and say, hey, I love how every dollar of that's being spent, and that's exactly what we're going to do. But at the end of the day, or anywhere in between, but at the end of the day, it's the council that has the authority to appropriate those funds before they're spent.
And so what this particular is a request to allow that funding to take place.
Yes.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. I really do. I think that clarification, and I think that's the public needs to know that we're not just overfunding some things to build a balance somewhere.
Right. This fund balance that Julie has over a couple of years can amount to, you know, a substantial amount of money. And that needs to be understood, that it's still us as a council that makes the decision. She can recommend and her committee can recommend, but still, when it comes to spending the taxpayers' money, it comes back to us.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that have to take the public input if it's not what they want done with the money.
Yeah, that's correct. This board has that final say on what gets authorized for spending.
Okay.
Thank you. And then the only other question I had, it wasn't for you, Julie.
Okay.
As I was looking through all of this, if we attacked the thought, and we brought this up several times, of maybe still the formation of some sort of a maintenance team for our facilities, grounds, and that, for all of the county facilities, rather than, you know, different people at different sites, that we could maybe collectively bring them together and be a little more efficient there. That's one thing I was, maybe something in this budget would show up a little bit more evident. So.
Dave, would you like to offer any amendments to the motion and make any changes?
Well, I think, you know, I've thought about that, but I think that's still a little bit forthcoming. I think we need to do a little more research on, you know, I think we need to look in at like some sort of a committee or something. We really look into it a lot more before we start pulling the money out, I'm afraid. I don't know.
I guess my question would be, if we hire someone to do the grounds at the new building, is that going to be problematic if we then later get together and figure out how a grounds committee, maintenance committee would go?
Well, my thought on the reason I seconded it is everything that I read there is within the realm that you're to spend that money for. It looked like it was needed and it could be used to the best ability, and I didn't want to slow it down.
And that's my purpose for the motion.
But I see.
What's here is here, and
And I think we need to
we
respect
don't
the
want to
committee.
hold everything up because
That's
we
right.
maybe want
We
some
need to
other things.
respect that committee that Julie's got, because I'm sure they do just like our RAPS committee. They really go over it and they look at it close and under a microscope, and that's what they recommend. And unless we see something that's way out, that's probably a good recommendation.
Well, I won't pull anything out as far as that goes. I would like to see that we may provide some funding for that, but maybe not run out real fast and hire someone. And maybe we can, put something a little more concrete together. I'm really looking at all the facilities.
Would you like me to put that on the agenda for next time?
I think we'll let, Mr. Zook kind of just dig into that a little bit more. And
I think it would be helpful to the council if we kind of had some form of report from Julie as to the amount of money's there and how much, each year as to where it is. So
well,
that we're a little
what I'm
bit aware
talking,
of
this
it.
second part I'm talking about isn't with Julie. This is about grounds and maintenance and
Maintenance
hiring
crew.
these other facilities. So I just think that we can probably do a lot better rather than every facility has its own team of people. I think that we could maybe group something together that takes care of all the facilities. So anyway, just a thought to throw out there, but I don't have any other reservations there, so.
Call the question.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to end debate. Is there any objection to ending debate? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving Resolution 2021-11, which amends the 2020 Cache County budget, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. We are now moving to 11A, initial proposals for consideration of action, discussion on the proposal for cemetery plot exchange. John Leafy.
This is a follow-up on one of the other items that we discussed briefly at the workshop that we had about some excess properties and road turnarounds. We've discovered that the county owns 99 cemetery plots in the Logan Cemetery. All but 19 of those are occupied, and you may wonder about those. Some of those are Logan Pioneers in some of those. I just quickly looked today. There's a Nicolene Samuelson, born in Denmark, 1834, died in 1892 here in Logan. I believe she was a pioneer there. In the early 1900s, the county, Barney Barnfield, a county charge for a number of years, died January 22nd and was buried in the Logan Cemetery on January 23rd. Those are some of those 99. There's some folks deceased as late as the 1980s that I saw, but not sure what the county's involvement was. But that's that segment that are occupied. There are 19 plots that are vacant or unoccupied, and we've spoken with Janine about the indigent services that the state code requires the county to provide in some circumstances. Those have moved almost exclusively to cremation when the county gets involved. I've spoken with Terrell about victim services and whether there might be occasion for it to be good to have some cemetery plots for victim services. And our recommendation is that between potential victim services and indigents and whatever else may come up, whether it's a disaster, that the council keep those 19 plots rather than sell them. Right now, the cemetery sells plots for $750 each. So those 19 plots, if you did decide to sell them, would be about $14,000. And the benefit of having them for contingencies would probably be best to keep them. With that background, the county's been contacted by a family who has family cemetery plots adjacent to some of the county's 19 and expressed a desire to purchase plots from the county. And our recommendation, Mr. Zook's, his suggestion, we're recommending that rather than sell any of those, that the county be willing to swap and allow a family to buy, if they want 2 plots of the county plots, buy 2 other plots in the Logan Cemetery, and that the county be willing to make that swap so they could have plots next to their family. I spoke with the sexton today, and that could happen. The cemetery wouldn't have a problem with that. So that's kind of what we're bringing for you to discuss, to confirm whether you want to keep all 19 plots that aren't occupied, and if so, are you willing to do exchanges? An exchange in this circumstance, and would that be a general practice or not? And that's what we bring to you to discuss.
John, I had a question. Are all of the lots or the plots that we currently own, are they all together, or are they spread out across the cemetery?
It looks like, and the sexton's provided somewhat of a map, and we could get more detail, but it looks like our 18 open plots are really right in the center part of the cemetery and quite close together. I don't know that they're all adjacent, but they're fairly close there in the center of the cemetery.
Thanks.
How often do we need a plot for the conditions that the county has?
Very rarely.
It's very rare, isn't it?
Well, and if we're talking that cremation is recommended on some, wouldn't that kind of permeate over all required? Or some say on the victim services they would want a burial plot or something like that, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and Terrell, I don't know if Terrell's, but she, apparently over the years, occasionally victim services have provided a burial plot when, usually Terrell says a church is willing to step up and help provide those services, but on occasion, the county has. Janine could speak to the indigents with more expertise than me, but that appears to have in recent years all gone to cremation, but we can imagine that there are probably circumstances that we can't imagine, but that we can imagine that it could come up that maybe in this instance cremation isn't the way to go. That if the trade-off is $750 of revenue, it's probably better to just hold the plots.
John, I just need a clarification. So when you say swap out those plots, does that mean that if someone comes in and wants 2 plots, do we pay for those plots? Or what? How does that work?
What we're thinking is telling this family who would like, my understanding is 2 plots adjacent to their other family plots, that we would say, if you'll go to the cemetery and buy 2 plots, okay, which would probably be on the east end, the newer areas, or the more recent places where their burials are happening, and then we'd go to the cemetery and just exchange plots, and then the county would have 2 on the east end and give up 2 there in the middle.
That sounds okay.
That's fine, but if any fees ought to be incurred by the family that's initiating it, you know, any kind of exchange fees whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then I think it's also good to keep the grouping as much as together as possible.
Okay.
I don't have any heartbeat, speaking of myself personally, I don't have any heartbeat if the family has got grandma and grandpa buried right next to some of our plots, that we go ahead and sell them, let them do all the fees and exchanges and everything, and us take a couple of plots somewhere else in the cemetery. We aren't partial to those plots, I don't think, are we?
No.
I would guess that one plot to the county is as good as another plot.
Well, it doesn't seem like that we're needing a grouping of anything else that way either.
That's right.
So.
You would hope you would never need a grouping, right?
Pardon?
You would hope you would never need a grouping.
Exactly, and if we do, then we're gonna need more down the road, so.
Do we need a formal motion on this, John?
No, just hearing this discussion is helpful, and we can communicate with that family and bring back something when we do need formal action from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 11B, Discussion on the creation of a committee to review the COVID-19 response in Cache County. Paul Borup.
I thought especially with the recent.
Second.
I thought especially with the recent bill that was passed in the Utah legislature, you know, the county's going to have a little more oversight. And I thought it would be good to have something that we could use, and really 3 main points. You know, we had, number 1, plans for a pandemic response at a national level, state levels, local levels, country levels, before this pandemic came along. Then number 2, why was that plan abandoned, right? I think it'd be good for us to know why the plans that sat on the shelf with a lot of information behind them were so quickly abandoned, and then to understand what plans were put into place by health officials, and then did the actions of those new plans actually work, right? So now we have some conflicting stuff that it would be interesting for us to know. And then what was the effect of the interventions that were there? It was on economic health, mental health, physical health, the social health of the community. Were our responses correct or incorrect? And then what should our future responses be? And I think if we kind of had a committee that we pulled in the health department, the local health department, the state health department, talked to the hospitals, Bear River Mental Health, CAPSA, victim services, and the like, to see what the impact of the community was. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What do we need to do in the future? There's probably another one coming down the pipe, and it'll be really nice to have something there, because we have some more responsibility in this now with that new legislation that was passed. So I'd like to get that committee formed, look into it, and be able to provide the council and future councils just some kind of lessons learned through this whole thing.
And you could chair that committee.
I would do that. I would love to look into this.
Oh, yes, Executive Sec.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea, and maybe I could make a suggestion about something else that could be looked at. Something that concerned me about the whole process was the tendency of government agencies or government leaders to assert power where maybe they didn't constitutionally have that power or legally have that power. And I think in some ways it's a dangerous precedent, and I think too many of our citizens in our country think it's okay. And an example I'll give you is the fireworks. If you see what's been happening recently with the drought and the fireworks, people are calling on the governor to just outlaw fireworks statewide. And he doesn't have the authority to do that. But people don't understand that, and they're just saying, well, you're the government, just order everyone to stop doing something. Just use your power and your authority to make something the law of the land. And there's a process for all of these types of things. We have a form of government in our country, in our state, in our county, in our cities, that we have a process laid out for establishing laws, for enforcing laws. And I was very concerned, and I'm still concerned about things I saw over the last year where people asserted too much power and took on too much power beyond what they legally had. So I'd love to see a discussion, investigation, some kind of thought about how we can avoid that in the future. Were there any cases here in our county, from our health districts, or from our county, from our cities, where those bounds were overstepped, and how would we avoid that in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job up here, but there were other parts of the state where that definitely happened, and other parts of the country, and you're seeing some lawsuits that were filed, but you don't want your citizens to have to initiate a whole bunch of problem for the rights that they naturally have. So that'd be good.
James isn't here, but I think you probably concur that among that list to be included might be a representative from the police office as well. And I say that I saw over the last year that there were times when the perception of what the government was mandating was not in line with what the government was or was not mandating, that there was a perception of mandates when there weren't mandates in some instances. And then there certainly were mandates. And the part of, in a future scenario, I think would be addressing what kind of communication would be good, because the lay public can hear, doesn't keep track of recommendations versus mandates. For the terminology often got used very carefully with attorney advice to keep within constitutional bounds, and yet what gets reported comes across in every instance almost as a mandate. And had it been mandates, there would have been more constitutional problems. But things came out that weren't necessarily mandates, and then it becomes a communication issue. So I would hope that our office could also be involved to help analyze when there was or wasn't constitutional overstep.
Thank you.
Clerk Bradfield, you wanted to make a comment?
I'll approach you as the auditor in this case.
Auditor.
It's okay. Put one on, take a hat off. I have remaining funds. We are about to complete the audit of the code for the executive's office, and we're about to complete the audit of the code regarding the recorder's office. We were planning to continue with code audits. In this case, what I could do is, as the county auditor, provide one of my my lawyers who is conducting the code with remaining funds and have them assist you as a delegate from the auditor's office, if you are interested.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to volunteer to serve on the committee as well.
Okay, well, we need a motion to create the committee.
Well, I'll make the motion, we set this committee up.
Second.
Okay. Carl stepped out for a minute. Bryson, will you make sure you put in the minutes that he stepped out and then when he comes back in?
Yeah.
I'm assuming he'll come back.
Chairman of the committee.
Oh, that he's the chairman. Oh, I get what you mean. I was like, wait a minute, I'm the chair.
It's like a ditch company meeting, you gotta go to protect yourself.
He left, so now he's in charge of the whole thing. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to create this committee. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And one missing. Okay. Paul, we'll leave that in your hands to get that organized, and can't have a quorum of council members on, just so you know. Okay. You probably figured that out, but I just needed to remind you. Okay. Now we have a list of other county business. So next Tuesday, June 29th, from 3 to 7 is the Children's Justice Center grand opening. We think the ceremony will be at 4 o'clock, as was stated. Also that day, we have planned a joint planning commission county council workshop, and that will be at 5 o'clock, and that will be here. We'll get an agenda out soon. We're looking at talking about RU5, RU2 roads, pioneering roads. Is there any other items that we need to talk to with the planning commission?
How long is this gonna last?
It's gonna go at least midnight if we're talking about all those things.
Yeah.
No, we can set a time limit to make sure that we're not here all night and that we keep the discussion going, so. Maybe 7, would that be appropriate? 6 or 7? I don't know. I don't want to go later than 7. It's just, when you get that many people with that many opinions, we've got to make sure that we keep things going, so. We'll set a time to adjourn. That's a good idea, Barbara. Thank you for that input. Okay, we have the Lewiston 4th of July parade on July 3rd. That sounds so funny to say. We have David Zick, David Erickson, Carl, and Barbara. Anybody else for that day? Okay, we have the Hiram 4th of July parade on July 5th. And that's David Zick, Barbara, Gordon, Nolan, Carl, and Gina. The Cache County Employee Summer Party will be Thursday, July 15th at 6 p.m. That's going to be fun. That will be at the fairgrounds, and we're having food trucks, right? So the council isn't cooking as we have done before, but we can help out, right? like get drinks or something, right, okay. The Hyde Park Hometown Days Parade is Saturday, July 17th at 10 a.m. I'll have myself, Barbara, maybe Carl. Anyone else want to go to that parade? Okay, the North Logan Pioneer Day Parade is Friday, July 23rd. That's Barbara. I'm not sure if I'll be there. David Erickson.
I'll need to take my name off
Okay.
there also.
So will anyone be there? Because that means everybody's got a question mark.
Which one is that?
That is the North Logan Pioneer Day Parade. It's a fun parade.
It's a nice parade, but Friday's a bad day for me on that.
We will attend. I'll attend at least.
Okay. Did you just get volunteered, Bryson? North Logan's a nice town. I'll vouch for
You'll
him.
have to exercise your arm so you don't pull a muscle.
Start working out now. Okay, Logan City Pioneer Day Parade is Saturday, July 24th, and that's at noon. And we have Carl, Barbara, David Erickson, and probably me. And the Summer Salsa Showdown is going to be Tuesday, July 27th at 3 p.m. And that is here, and we are the judges, and that's right before our council meeting. Can we buy like a couple jugs of milk for those of us that are not into the heat? Okay. All right, so we have 2 things left. We have council member reports and then executive session. So let's move to council member reports. David Erickson, let's start with you.
Okay. Just a real quick question that I had for Dr. Harold. In the past 60 days on the GIS, this is the question I had for you, I didn't want you to leave. What is the red lines all of a sudden popping up on all the GIS roads?
It's probably the county roads layer. If you have the roads layer for the county roads selected, it will put a red line on what is a county road.
This is like in the past 60 days they've popped up.
There's probably a couple things happening. And if I get it wrong, Matt is here and will correct me. But there's a couple things. Recently, we changed to CDOC. If you're aware of that change, a lot of records in the clerk's office became available to us that were not previously.
Okay.
So Carrie, and our GIS administrator, went through all those documents and was sorting through them and noticed that there were road vacations that had occurred and also roads that belonged to us that weren't documented correctly on our GIS layers. So he updated all those, working with the clerk's office. Some of the other stuff may be related to the change with the road manual. No? So maybe it is just the one piece. I'm guessing at the red pieces, David, so.
Well, it's been brought to my attention, and I looked it up and I go, yeah, it's just quite kind of interesting that they popped up. And I'm saying it's good, I'm just saying that other patrons have also noticed it.
Chris was right in kind of how the research came. A lot of those are right-of-ways. So if we have a record of a right-of-way that was recorded, it might be between 2 private entities. But it's really been beneficial for us as doing zoning clearances, subdivision reviews. We could probably get Carrie to turn that off so that it wasn't so glaring.
No,
but
it's positive.
Yeah.
The patrons are kind of wondering.
They are some of the things that Chris discussed, but a lot of those are just easements. They might be recorded. They might have something that was recorded. But they help us to be able to see, hey, wait, there's something on this property. Let's look into it and make sure that we're not allowing someone to build on someone else's easement so they are beneficial. But they don't have anything to do with the new road manual. They don't have anything to do with the rest of it. It's just we're finding more research.
Okay, and then I wanted to thank you, out there at the Public Works buildings, stuff, that dedication. I thought that was excellent. I thought that the facilities, and I think that I would personally want to thank past Executive Butters and Josh Runyar and the past county councils that have been involved in the infancy of that and to keep that thing going. I think it's a huge thing between the Hiram facility and the Richmond facility, and I thought that was an Bart, Double T. He's, all the effort that he put in. I mean, that to make it all get the tech issues and everything that are necessary. I think that's a huge it's a huge undertaking and a very valuable one, and it'll be there well after I die. And that's it. Appreciate it.
Thanks, David. Gordy?
We met with a fire board and ambulance now. And one of the things that I told the board there that I would bring back to our board and give you a heads up on, and that is the decision that when we have an ambulance call that goes out, there's a certain price that is fixed on that. Sometimes Medicare will pay some, Medicaid maybe some, maybe an insurance will pay some. But in certain cases, it doesn't anywhere near come to the amount of money that is billed. And so as a result, there's an outstanding bill. Through council, the committee has been advised that when you come and a particular bill is uncollectible, being over 2 years old and been tried to collect on numerous times, that it comes to a point that you've got to finally decide you're not going to get any money. And so we were counseled that in our committee that we could oversee that and make sure that every effort has been made to collect the additional money that's owed the county, but when it's uncollectible, to be able to, with all the information that they can provide, we'll be able to just write that off. And I said, I don't know if I feel comfortable of in our committee doing it without the council know that that's a possibility, that someday that may happen. And so I'm just informing the council that maybe in the future there'll be some of those revenues that at one time thought to be collectible are no longer collectible, and rather than having them on the books and carrying them, that it may come before the fire board committee, and we'll just give permission to write them off. Under your approval, we'll assume that. Otherwise, we have to bring everything to the council and take up time in here and explain everything and do all that. And I said, I don't think I want to hear all that. And I said I would inform the council that would possibly be something that would happen in the future. And we just want you to be aware that may happen. And if you have heartburn over it, then we'll do something different. But if there's any comments, I'd like to have some, information input.
Any responses, council?
What's deemed uncollectible? Does that mean it's gone to the estate of the individual? Or how far do you go as determining uncollectible?
I think what they do is on a county basis, they do everything in their power to find possibilities to collect the money, and it's just not collectible because of the income and the family, etc. And it's just not able to do it. And
at the Sims, when we had Sims, it was handled at that level, so it'd be the same.
It's the same thing. It's just that now we got to do it at our county committee, and I'm just letting you.
Because we're a fire district. Yeah, that's where that decision's made.
I'm not sure I'm explaining it without making it muddier than it sounds, but I just wanted, before we start doing that the rest of the council know that that's something that our district board would be considering and doing in the future.
That's wholly appropriate.
Yeah, I do too.
No heartburn with it?
Doesn't look like there's any heartburn.
So Janine, if you'll put it in the minutes that we covered that so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. I don't like to get in trouble.
Yeah, Bryson, if you'll include that. Thank you. Anything else, Gordy?
I don't know. I guess, our council maybe want to put some words in for that or not, but it's legal with what we're doing from your council. Is that correct? Okay. That's all.
Thank you.
I apologize to everybody that haven't made it to all the fun activities, but when it snows, I'll be 100% with you again.
Okay, well, we've missed you. Okay, Carl?
Nothing.
Okay, I have two things. The first thing is, I was looking at the possibility of having a workshop at our next meeting. We have an issue that's coming up as It's a budget issue. It has to do with our employees. We're getting employees, and this is happening throughout the state, getting poached from other counties. And we need to look at what we need to do with wages, not just to keep them here, but for new people. As you know, the wage thing has gone crazy. When I was on vacation, even last week, I know it's not just Utah, but South Dakota, I was at the gas station and they wanted to pay $18 to hire you to work at the gas station. And I was really amazed by that. I've noticed that the subway in North Logan has a $500 signing bonus up. You know, I think it's McDonald's that was $17 an hour now to get there. And so we've got some issues. The compensation committee is going to take a look at this, but I thought the council needed to be made aware of it, and that the best way to do that would be through a workshop and get information to us to see what we want to do with the situation.
Didn't the state of Utah pass that they would do away with the COVID funding, but it wasn't until the 1st of July, as I recall. Is that correct?
I don't know what the day is. Amy, do you know?
That's correct.
The unemployment.
Yeah, the unemployment.
And until we get a situation where we get to the point, and I shouldn't be involved in your time, but in my opinion is until we stop giving out free money, the people that need to fill these jobs is going to stay out of the job market.
I would agree in it, but it's causing a problem for those who are working, and the wages are going up, and we need to keep our good people, and so I thought it would be a good discussion. So the other thing I wanted to let you know, and Barbara I think knows this, and hopefully I'm not stealing her thunder because I've already stole thunder once today. Our cash celebration of women's suffrage that the county council supported and the county supported has won a national award for our exhibit. It's the prestigious 2021 Albert B. Corey Award by the American Association for State and Local History. And it's given to one winner in the nation per year and recognizes volunteer organizations that best display the qualities of vigor, scholarship, and imagination in their work. So we're really excited about that, that our exhibit that we created and the effort we went to is nationally recognized, and they will be giving the award out in Arkansas in September. And Jamie Van Huss from the Hiram City Museum, who was part of our group, will be there to collect that award on our behalf. But I wanted to let you know because the council was so supportive and helpful in what we did.
I think we ought to look towards sending you and Barbara and those people there, you know. We can fund it out of all that slush money we got.
I don't know if going to Arkansas is a prize.
I'll stay home. Somebody else can have all the glory.
Well, thank you. I appreciate how supportive everyone was, and it was a fun experience. So
it was nice.
Barbara, on that note, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, Matt, thank you for the open house out there today. I was late getting out there. I got out there, my husband and I got out there about 1:30. It was great, and he was very impressed with everything out there. So thank you for all that you and your crew have done out there, and it's been needed. So good job. Chris, what have we heard, or what's going on with Forrest Olson and his little business venture?
So you'll recall we went through the process of updating our code. I have not yet seen an application from Forrest.
Okay.
I did see him in the office within the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So he's met with staff. I think he's putting something together.
Excellent, thank you. That's all that I have.
Barbara, I might shed a little light on that.
No, I don't, but I just, I want him to, what's
Paul
that?
says he has an update.
The building that he's supposedly to be doing the killing in that is pretty well all the way up in that.
Is it?
So there's things going on, but apparently he just hasn't applied for a permit yet. But
Okay.
it's moving, and it's a needed thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Nothing for me.
Thanks, Paul. And Nolan?
I just want to bring up, I think as the summer goes on, that some of our residents in the county are going to experience some well water problems. I think we ought to be discussing that we have some solution or some agreement with some of the municipalities that our residents can go in and get water I know in years before that there has been some milk tankers who have provided the ability to bring water in to some things like that. I just think that ought to be something we're thinking about in the future. I've got some residents out by me who are experiencing water issues at this point, and I don't see any end to that, and I think it's going to get worse. So I don't know how we go about that. I don't know if that's been discussed, but some kind of solution and networking with other communities that Wellsville or Smithfield or somebody says, hey, we've got a place to come in and get water, because that's going to be a thing that's going to happen.
Years ago in my father's home, there on Highway 89, it was a pioneer well. The well was drilled back in the really early 1900s, and there was one year, about 20 years ago, that the aquifer went down to the point that he couldn't pump with his surface well. So it will happen, and it can happen. I'm suspecting it will happen again this year, as dry as it's been.
Nolan you asked if it's been discussed. We actually had a discussion today with our emergency manager, who's in the sheriff's office, and one of our county engineers and a couple of public works staff, about this very topic, and about potentially getting an old milk tanker that we could use.
Right, to haul water around.
Yeah, to haul water around. And also another thing I brought up was the same thing you said. The municipalities, their wells are going to be fine. They're very deep, and most of them, I guess not necessarily all of them, but most of them are very deep and are tapped into really good water aquifers. So I think that's a great point, if we could have partnerships with them or some kind of an agreement where people can obtain water from those. Because the other good thing is those municipal water supplies are tested. They're going to be clean water, drinkable water. So I think it's definitely something we should be prepared to help with, and our emergency manager is already working on it.
Good, because I think we're going to be drawing on it.
There are some municipalities that are having not in compliance right now because of the quality of the well.
Yeah, I noticed Clarkson, on Clarkson's website, they have a notice.
It's Cornish's.
Asking, well, Clarkson does too.
Yeah.
Asking people to not water certain times because they're trying to catch up and keep up on their wells. So I don't know if that's a usual thing, but they're doing it there too.
It's serious out there. Just the quality of the water, as the volume goes down, the quality, nitrates, I mean, all the phosphorus, all these things kind of get to a level of a non-compliance, and so, you know, we do have some monies. I believe we've kind of linked up with some options to try to help some of these towns and cities, and to be able to get better infrastructure and buildings. So
Thank you. Anything else, Nolan?
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Maker of motion, please include the reason and where we are meeting.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to code 52-4-2051A, discussion of the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move into executive session for discussion of character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual in the council chambers right behind us. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we will now move into that room.
You bet.